Have you ever stopped to wonder what really goes on behind your neighbor's door? The friendly wave, the small talk over the fence. But what if, behind that smile, lives something sinister? Something watching, waiting. Because sometimes, the most terrifying people aren't hiding in the woods or lurking in abandoned buildings. They live right next to you. In tonight's video, we're diving into 3 true horror stories of neighbors that crossed every line of fear and sanity. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll think twice before borrowing sugar from the guy next door. So turn off the lights. Story number 1, The Basement Screams. Lena had always thought she lived in a quiet, safe neighborhood. Suburban. Clean. The kind of place where people mow their lawns on Sundays and wave at each other without really knowing one another. Her neighbor, Mr. Dawson, was a retired electrician. Late 60s. Widowed. Always polite, always quiet. He kept to himself, and for the most part, so did Lena. But one night, things changed. It was a Wednesday. Around 2:37 a.m. Lena was lying in bed, scrolling on her phone when she heard it. A scream. Not loud. Not hysterical. But muffled, like it was coming from underground. She sat up, heart racing, and listened again. Silence. She convinced herself it was nothing. Maybe a TV left on. Maybe a dream. But the next night, it happened again. Same time. Same muffled scream. This time, it was followed by a strange thumping sound, like something, or someone, was being dragged across a concrete floor. And it was coming from Mr. Dawson's basement. Lena didn't want to jump to conclusions. But she couldn't shake the sound. So she did something she never thought she'd do. She pressed her ear to the wall that connected their houses. And she heard it, clear as day. Whimpering. Then, a voice. A woman's voice, trembling, saying, "Please, let me go." Lena backed away, terrified. She grabbed her phone and called the police. But when they arrived and knocked on Mr. Dawson's door, he opened it, calm, collected, even smiling. He invited them in. They searched the house and found nothing. No sounds. No signs of anyone else living there. Just a neat home, a clean kitchen, and a locked basement door. When asked, Mr. Dawson said it was just old wiring causing noises. The officers didn't push. No warrant. No evidence. They left. But Lena couldn't forget. So she started watching. Every night. And that's when she saw it. At exactly 3 a.m., Mr. Dawson would open the basement door. He'd go down carrying a tray. On it, what looked like food, and a glass of water. He never turned the basement light on. Just disappeared into the darkness for 10, maybe 15 minutes. Then came back up. Alone. Lena decided to install a camera in her backyard, angled at his basement window. What she captured made her blood run cold. At 3:17 a.m., the camera picked up movement. Something, or someone, was standing in the window. Pale face. Sunken eyes. Mouth moving, like she was silently screaming. Lena turned the footage into the police again. This time, they came back with a warrant. And what they found in Mr. Dawson's basement was a hidden room, soundproofed, with chains on the wall. Inside was a woman, malnourished, terrified, but alive. She had been missing for over 6 months. A woman from the next town over. Reported kidnapped after her car broke down on the highway. Mr. Dawson was arrested that night. And Lena never slept with her window open again. It's easy to assume that evil wears a mask. Or hides in the shadows. But sometimes, it wears a smile. And lives right next door. Story number 2, The Man in the Window. For months, Kayla thought she was imagining things. It started as a vague feeling, like someone was watching her. when she was in the kitchen, when she took out the trash, even when she was getting ready for bed. Every time she glanced out her window at night, there he was. Her neighbor, Mr. Clevens. He lived in a small house directly across the street. A strange man, always alone, always standing by the window. But the weirdest part? He never moved. It wasn't just once or twice. It was every night. Same window. Same posture. Same blank stare, eyes locked directly on Kayla's front door. At first, she laughed it off. Creepy, but maybe he's just a harmless old man, she told herself. But as time went on, the staring got more intense. He'd stand there for hours. Not blinking. Not shifting. Just watching. Kayla tried closing her curtains, but it didn't help. She still felt his eyes burning through the fabric. One evening, she decided to film it. She set up her phone on the windowsill and hit record. When she reviewed the footage later, her stomach dropped. Not only was Mr. Clevens staring directly into her camera lens, but at one point, he raised his hand very slowly and waved, as if he knew she was watching him. The next day, Kayla walked over to speak with him. She knocked. No answer. She peeked in through the window. The blinds were drawn. No sign of anyone inside. She even asked the neighbors if they'd seen him recently. And that's when she learned something that made her knees go weak. Mr. Clevens had died 2 years ago. Heart attack. In that house. Alone. No one had lived there since. But Kayla had been seeing someone. Every night. In the window. Of a house that was supposed to be empty. She didn't believe it. So that night, she watched again. 2:53 a.m. There he was. Same man. Same face. Staring right at her. She grabbed her flashlight and phone and marched across the street. Her hands trembled as she turned the rusted doorknob. It creaked open. Unlocked. Inside. Dust. Cobwebs. Rotten air that hadn't moved in years. But no footprints. No furniture. Nothing but an old wooden chair right by the window. And sitting in that chair. Nothing. No man. No movement. Just the sound of her own breath. Until... Sudden shift in tone. Behind her, a whisper. I see you too. She turned, flashlight shaking in her hand. But there was no one there. She ran home, heart pounding, locked every door and window. The next morning, she returned with a friend and a camera. The house was sealed shut. The chair? Gone. And in the dust by the window, a single footprint. Kayla moved out 2 weeks later. No one lives on that street anymore. But if you ever find yourself near Halberd Lane, look closely at the second window on the left. You might just see the man who never stopped watching. Story number 3, Borrowed Time. Mark and Julia were newlyweds when they moved into their first real home. A modest little house on the edge of a sleepy town. It was the kind of place they thought would be the start of something beautiful, gardens, barbecues, maybe even children someday. And the best part? Their neighbor, Greg, seemed like a dream. Friendly. Helpful. Always smiling. He introduced himself the very first day they arrived, even brought over a bottle of wine as a housewarming gift. Greg lived alone in the house next door and claimed he'd been in the neighborhood for over 20 years. You're going to love it here, he said. I'm just across the fence if you need anything. At first, it was great. Greg mowed their lawn while Mark was at work. He brought Julia tomatoes from his garden. He even helped them fix a broken garage door once. But after a while, his kindness started to feel more like surveillance. He always seemed to be around. Whether Julia was watering the plants or Mark was leaving for work, Greg would suddenly appear, leaning on the fence, asking oddly personal questions. Where do you two usually go on Friday nights? How late do you sleep in on weekends? Any plans to start a family soon? At first, they laughed it off. But then things started going missing. Small things. Keys. A necklace. Mail that never arrived. And once, Julia swore she saw someone standing inside their backyard shed at night, but when Mark checked, no one was there. Then, one evening, as Mark returned from work, he found something disturbing. The front door was unlocked. Julia was supposed to be home, but she wasn't answering her phone. He stepped inside, calling her name. Julia? The house was silent. But as he moved through the hallway, he found something on their bedroom door. A sticky note. It simply read, "Borrowed time is running out." Mark panicked and called the police. They searched the house, no sign of forced entry. Julia finally came home 20 minutes later. She had just gone for a walk, unaware of anything strange. But the note had vanished. Mark started to question his own mind. Until the next night, when they both heard it. Scraping. Coming from their attic. Mark went up to check, flashlight in hand, bat in the other. Nothing. Just dusty boxes and cobwebs. But hidden behind a loose panel on the wall was something chilling. A small hole leading directly into Greg's attic. Greg had carved a peephole, allowing him to watch them. He had access to their attic from his house. He had been inside their home without them knowing. The police were called again. When they went to question Greg, he was gone. His house was empty. The furniture looked like it hadn't been touched in months. No clothes. No signs of anyone living there. But in his basement, they found a shrine. Photos of Julia. Clippings of her social media posts. A wedding photo that had gone missing from their living room was sitting in a frame, surrounded by candles. And then, something even more horrifying. A list. Dozens of names. All crossed out. Except for one. Julia. Further investigation revealed the truth. Greg wasn't Greg. His real name was Alan Wilkes. He had a long criminal record and had been reported missing over a decade ago after skipping parole. No one knew where he went. Until now. He had assumed the identity of the real Greg, who died years earlier. And for the past few years, he'd been slipping into homes, watching couples, studying them, until he was ready to strike. The borrowed time note was exactly that. A warning. Mark and Julia moved out of that house the next day. They never looked back. The house was put up for sale. And for months, no one would buy it. People say it still sits empty. But every once in a while, a neighbor swears they see a figure in the window. Just standing there. Waiting. Because some people don't just move next door. They move into your life. And they never plan to leave. 3 neighbors. 3 homes. And 3 lives forever changed by the horror that lived just a few feet away. It makes you wonder, how well do you really know the person next door? They might wave. They might smile. But what happens behind closed doors is a world you may never want to see. And if you're watching this at night, don't turn off the lights just yet. Because sometimes, the scariest things don't hide in the dark. They watch you from the window. If these stories gave you chills, make sure to subscribe for more true horror content just like this. Until next time.